It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when she asked. Not asked really. Demanded. I was standing in my parents' kitchen. The afternoon light coming through the window in that specific way that made the dust particles visible. You know that light. Mom was at the grocery store. Dad was in his study. It was just me and Margaret, my mother-in-law, in that kitchen where I'd learned to make bread, where my parents had taught me that some things aren't for sale. I need the keys, Margaret said. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her purse on her lap like she was ready to leave. Like this was already decided. I turned from the sink. My hands were still wet. I'm sorry, what? To the house. I need a set of keys. Your mother never uses this place during the week anyway. The guest room would be perfect for me. I could pop over whenever I need quiet time. There was something in the way she said it. Like she was explaining something obvious to someone slow. Like she was already living here, already arranging the furniture in her mind. I dried my hands on a dish towel. Very slowly. Very deliberately. Because I could feel something shifting inside me. That moment right before you say something you can't take back. Margaret, I said. No. That single word sat between us like a third person. No context. No apology. No explanation. Just no. She blinked. Actually blinked, like she was waiting for me to continue. When I didn't, her jaw tightened. Well, she said. That's not very generous of you. That's where the story really starts. Not with that moment, but with everything that led to it. Because this wasn't about keys. Margaret had been doing this for about 3 years. Not the keys thing specifically, but the constant reaching into our lives like it was a box of things that belonged to her. When James and I first got married, she seemed normal enough. She brought a casserole to our apartment. She asked how my job was going. It felt like the beginning of something nice, like maybe I'd won the family-in-law lottery. I remember texting my mom. She's actually really sweet. But there's a pattern in how some people love you. It looks like generosity until you realize it's actually an invoice. It looks like interest until you understand its inventory. The first real sign came about 6 months in. We'd mentioned, just casually over dinner, that we were thinking about taking a trip to Costa Rica in a year or so. Nothing concrete. Just a dream conversation. 2 weeks later, Margaret called me directly. Not James. Me. I've been looking into Costa Rica, she said. I'm thinking I should come with you. I've never been, and it would be so nice for us to have that memory together. I didn't know how to say no then. So I didn't. I said something weak like, oh well, we haven't actually booked anything yet. She'd already booked herself a resort. Not at our resort. Close to it, but separate, which somehow made it worse, because it meant she'd really been thinking about tagging along. James and I didn't end up going that year. Not because of Margaret, but the trip kept getting pushed back. But the thing that stuck with me was that she'd invited herself before we'd even asked. She'd assumed it was her space to occupy. There were smaller things too. She'd comment on what I was wearing. Not maliciously, just observations that felt like judgments. Oh, you're wearing your hair down today. That's different. She'd rearrange things in my kitchen when she visited. Not maliciously. Just helpfully. Moving the glasses to what she thought was a better spot. When I was pregnant with our daughter, Margaret started calling James, not us, just James, to ask what the nursery looked like, what colors we'd chosen, when she could come see it. She showed up one Saturday with paint samples. I thought you might want some ideas, she said, spreading them across our bedroom floor like she was the project manager. She had opinions about the birth plan. She wanted to be in the delivery room. When I said no, when I explained that it would just be James and a doula, she acted hurt for weeks. I just wanted to be there for you, she'd say to James, making sure he knew she was disappointed in me. Not in the situation. In me. It was death by 1,000 small invasions. Each one individually explainable. Dismissible. But together they formed a pattern. Margaret didn't see boundaries as something to respect. She saw them as suggestions. Obstacles to work around. And here's the thing I didn't want to admit. James kind of enabled it. Not intentionally. He just didn't see it the way I did. That's just how she is, he'd say. She means well. Which is true maybe. But meaning well doesn't mean you get to treat someone's life like it's your property to manage. My parents had never been like this. My dad had a saying, respect the fence, even when you could jump it. He meant that boundaries aren't obstacles. They're how you show people you care. When someone tells you where the line is, you stop before the line. Not at it. Before it. Margaret had never heard that saying. I'm not sure she would have understood it if she had. By the time she asked for the keys to my parents' house, she'd been incrementally pushing me back for 3 years. She'd already claimed so much space that I'd started moving out of the way without being asked. The keys thing didn't come out of nowhere. There was a conversation 2 weeks before. Margaret had decided she was having anxiety. She told us this over Sunday dinner at our place. She needed respite. She needed quiet spaces. Her house, where she'd lived for 20 years with my father-in-law, was too stimulating. Too many memories. Too much to handle alone. She looked at James when she said this, but her eyes kept flicking to me, checking to see if I understood what she was asking. What if you could have access to the house during the day? She said. Just quiet time. Your parents have so much space they're not using. My parents have a large house. It's true. But it's their house. They've worked for it, maintained it, filled it with their own life. The idea that it existed as some kind of emotional resource depot for Margaret, available whenever she needed to feel better, made my stomach turn. That would be something to talk to my parents about, I said. Well, Margaret said. I thought you could just make that decision. For them. That sentence. That one sentence is what shifted something in me. Make that decision for them. My parents, who had taught me that my body, my time, my space, my sovereignty over my own life, was the most important thing I had. Margaret thought I could just hand over my parents' space without consulting them. That my permission, as their daughter, was enough to give her access to their life. I didn't say anything at dinner. I just pushed food around my plate. But I called my mom that night. Margaret wants keys to the house, I told her. She wants a place to come during the day for quiet time. There was a pause. I could hear my mom processing this. What do you want? She asked. Not. What did you tell her? Not. We should probably say yes. Just. What do you want? I don't want it, I said. Then that's the answer. It should have been that simple. It wasn't. Because the next day, James brought it up. Not aggressively. Just, the topic appeared on the table between us like it was something we were discussing together. Mom really is struggling, he said. She's been having panic attacks. James, I know she's struggling. But that's not my parents' responsibility to solve. And it's definitely not something I should be deciding for them. She's not asking to live there. She just needs. She asked me to make the decision for them, I said. Do you understand what that means? She wanted me to promise my parents space to her without even asking them. No, she didn't say that. She said. She said I could make that decision for them. Those were the exact words. He went quiet. He knew what that meant. He knew his mother had crossed something. But he also didn't want to be the one to say it. The thing about James is that he's a good person. But he's also the son of someone who taught him that family love means endless accommodation. That saying no to someone you're related to is a kind of betrayal. So when his mother asked for something impossible, he couldn't bring himself to be the one to deny her. He needed me to do it. And when I did, he felt like he was taking my side against hers. Which meant, he was angry at me for not being enough of a daughter-in-law to give his mother what she needed. This is where the pattern really showed its teeth. It was March 15th when she finally came to my parents' house and asked for the keys in person. James was at work. She'd engineered it that way. I understood that later, when I thought about how she'd asked when she'd asked, how she'd made sure he wasn't there. She'd been working on this for 2 weeks. Working on him. Getting him to a place where if I said no, which he probably knew I would, he'd feel like I was the unreasonable one. That Tuesday in March, standing in my parents' kitchen with her purse on her lap, Margaret wasn't actually asking. She was announcing. She'd already decided this was happening. She just needed me to agree. "Margaret," I said. "No." And then I watched her decide how to respond. She could have gotten angry. She could have cried. She could have pulled some manipulation, played the victim, called James, made it my fault. Instead, she laughed. A small, dismissive sound. "You don't even realize how selfish that sounds, do you?" she said. "I'm reaching out. I'm asking for help. And you're just closing the door." "I'm not closing a door," I said. "There was never an open door. My parents' house is their home. It's not a waiting room for you to use when you need space." "Oh, so it's theirs, not yours? Then you should let them decide." "That's exactly what I did." "You talked to them first." "Yes, I did. Because I respect them." The word hung there. Respect. As if I was implying she didn't deserve any. Which, by that point, wasn't entirely untrue. She set her purse down. Very deliberately. She was going to have this conversation whether I was ready or not. "You know," she said, "I've always tried to be good to you. I've tried to welcome you into this family. And this is how you repay that, by shutting me out." "Margaret, you're not shut out. You're still welcome to visit. With my parents' permission, like a guest." "A guest? In my husband's family home." "It's not your home." "It could be if you weren't so cold." This is the moment I could have backed down. I could have apologized for something I didn't do. I could have found some middle ground that meant I was still the reasonable one, the one who could see both sides. I could have offered her something, maybe a standing invitation one day a week. Maybe I could work on my tone. I didn't. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about how to say this for a long time. The way you've been treating my boundaries, it's not okay. The way you treat James like he belongs to you. The way you move into spaces in my life without asking. The way you assumed you could make decisions about my parents' home without talking to them. None of it's okay." She stared at me. "I've been letting it happen because I didn't want to hurt you, or be the bad guy, or cause problems between you and James. But I can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't make you a better person, and it makes me smaller." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Yes, you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The question is whether you're willing to change it." She stood up. She pulled her purse toward her. "I came here thinking you might be a woman who valued family," she said. "Clearly I was wrong." "Margaret, wait. I value my family. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Because I love James. And I love my parents. And I can't be in a situation where you're treating all of us like your emotional property. That's not fair." "It's not about fair," I said. "It's about respect." She left. She actually left. She got in her car and drove away, and I stood in my parents' kitchen, that kitchen with the afternoon light and the dust particles. And I felt like I'd just jumped off a cliff. The physical sensation was real. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. I'd just done the thing you're not supposed to do. I'd chosen my integrity over keeping the peace. I'd made myself the villain in someone else's story. I sat at the kitchen table for maybe 20 minutes before my mom came home. She took one look at me and she knew something had happened. "Margaret was here," I said. I told her no. About everything. Not just the keys. All of it. My mom sat down across from me. She didn't say anything for a long moment. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Terrible," I said. "Do you mean terrible about what you said? Or terrible about knowing it was the right thing?" "Both." She nodded. Like she understood. Like she'd been here before too. "That's when you know you've done something real," she said. "When it feels wrong and right at the same time." James found out when his mother called him. I wasn't there for that conversation, but I could imagine it. Margaret would have told him that I was ungrateful, that I'd attacked her, that I'd shut the door on her without reason. He came home that evening and he was angry. Not yelling, but the kind of anger that sits in a room and makes the air feel cold. "What did you say to my mother?" he asked. "I told her the truth," I said. "About how I've been feeling. About how this needs to change." "You made her feel attacked." "James, she came to my parents' house and tried to get me to give her keys without asking them. She assumed she could make decisions about their life." "That's not what she said." "No. It's not what she told you." He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to decide. Who do you believe? Your wife of 5 years or your mother, who raised you, who you've known your whole life? He chose his mother. Not in words. In silence. In the way he went upstairs without saying anything else. We didn't talk about it for 2 days. We moved through the house around each other. He went to work. I took care of our daughter. We didn't fight because we weren't really there together. On the 3rd day he said, "My mother is very hurt." "I know she is. She wants us to go to therapy to talk about how you communicate with her." I almost laughed. Almost. But I recognized what was happening. Margaret had found a way to make this my fault. I didn't communicate well. I was cold. I was the problem. And now James was asking me to sit in a room with a therapist and a woman who'd tried to colonize my parents' life and discuss my communication style. "No," I said. "I'm not doing that." "Why not? If you're so sure you're right, you should be willing to talk about it." "Because I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm not going to treat myself like I did in order to make someone else feel better." "You called my mother selfish." "I didn't call her selfish. I said what she was doing was selfish. There's a difference." He didn't see the difference. I realized then that I was going to have to choose. Not between James and Margaret, but between being myself and being a version of myself that was small enough to fit in the space they'd carved out for me. I chose myself. Not dramatically. Not with a big announcement. Just, I stopped apologizing. I stopped explaining. I started setting boundaries with Margaret directly, without running it through James first. When she called and I didn't want to talk, I didn't talk. When she invited herself to things, I said no. And the thing that surprised me was that nothing happened. No explosión. No fallout. Margaret adjusted. She didn't like it, but she adjusted. And after about 6 months, James realized that the world hadn't ended. His mother had a difficult emotion and survived it. His wife had boundaries and maintained them. Both of these things could be true. He apologized eventually. Not a big apology. Just, "I wasn't fair to you." "No, you weren't," I said. "But I understand why." And I did. I understood that he was caught in the middle of 2 women he loved, and he hadn't known how to navigate it. That doesn't excuse the choice he made, but it explains it. The thing that stayed with me, though, was the moment in the kitchen. That moment when I said no, and kept saying it, even though it would have been easier to say yes. Easier isn't the same as better. There's a small moment, 2 years later, that I think about sometimes. We were at James's parents' house for Thanksgiving. Margaret had made the stuffing, her traditional recipe, the one she makes every year. She was passing it around the table, and when it got to me, she watched to see if I would take some. I did. Because I like her stuffing. It's good. Just because I have boundaries doesn't mean I have to reject everything. "Good," she said. Matter of fact. Not pleased. Just noting that I hadn't made it a symbol of something. Later, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. We hadn't been alone together since the kitchen confrontation. I considered saying no. But I also considered that sometimes people deserve a second chance to show you who they're going to be. We walked around the neighborhood. We talked about her garden. She asked about our daughter's school. Normal conversation. Civil conversation. At the end of the walk, she said, "I wasn't very fair to you before. I didn't see. I didn't understand that my way of showing love was making you feel trapped. Thank you for saying that, I said. I still don't always like it when you say no, she said. But I understand now that you're going to anyway. Yes, I am. That's actually kind of beautiful, in a way, she said. Knowing what you want and not apologizing for it. That wasn't a full reconciliation. It wasn't even, technically, a real apology. But it was something. It was her meeting me halfway. Here's what I want you to understand. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you don't have to earn the right to protect your own space. You don't have to be nice enough or explaining enough or empathetic enough to justify a boundary. The boundary itself is the justification. When someone gets upset that you won't let them colonize your life, they're not upset because you're cold. They're upset because you stop being small for their comfort. And yes, sometimes saying no costs you something. It might cost you family peace. It might cost you someone's approval. It might cost you the illusion that you're the kind of person who keeps everyone happy. But what it buys you is yourself. Full and whole and not fractured into pieces to fit into other people's pictures of who you should be. In that kitchen, with the afternoon light and the dust particles, I chose myself. It didn't feel good, but it felt true. And that made all the difference.